So, hi, everybody. Welcome. It is Monday, August 15th. It's 6:33. This is a community zoning change meeting for the 11th Ward. I'm Nicole Lee. I'm the alderman of the 11th Ward. This is regarding subject property 4746 South Union. And a zoning change that has been requested by the owners who are on the call with us. And they're represented by their attorney, Mark Kupiak. The zoning change that's been requested is the existing R3 to an R4. I'm gonna let Mark give you the overview after we just do a quick round of introductions, just so that everybody knows who's on the call. So if you don't mind, so I'll just go in order of who I see on my little feed here. So I think we have the owners on the call with us. Henrika.
Yes, I'm here.
Will you just introduce yourself and let people know how long you've owned the property, and if you've lived in the building at all, or if you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself and who you are.
Yes, so I am Enrica, and we bought that building like 6 or 7 years ago by the 4746 South Union. As we buy that building, it was we thought it's too flat, too family. But we just found out when we have closing to sell that house, we found out it's the single house from the lawyer on the closing. That's why we want to rezone that.
Got it. Thank you. And then we've got Mark. Mark, I'm going to save you to the end of this. Oh, Mark,
That's fine.
I'm letting another Mark in right now. Okay. Robert, do you want to introduce yourself from the 15th Ward?
Hello, everyone. My name is Robert Martinez. I'm representative from the 15th Ward, Alderman Lopez's office.
Thanks for being here. We've got Ibis.
Hi, I'm Ibis Anton Georgi. We are residents of Canaryville.
Great. Thanks for being with us. Jack. Jack, if you can hear us, I just wanted to have you introduce yourself. If you can unmute.
Yeah, sorry, Alderman. Again, I'm early to the meeting because I was.
Oh, you want the next one?
Wallace Street. So
Okay.
I'll listen to this one and wait, and I'll dial in for the Wallace Street meeting.
Okay.
That's what I was interested in.
Great to have you with us again. No worries.
Yep, thanks. Okay.
And then we've got Kathy is on my staff here. She handles zoning for the ward office.
Also, Jack, the other meeting is a different Zoom number, just FYI. Okay.
Thank you, Kathy. Yep, I got it.
Good. Okay. Thank you, Jack.
I've
Thanks,
got
Alderman.
somebody listed here as Win user. Can you unmute yourself and just introduce yourself?
Yeah, this is Rich Garcia. I am a property owner over there on Union.
Great, thanks, Rich. And then Marie Gonzalez. Marie might not have audio. I don't actually see a microphone, so I'll come back. At this point, I'd like for Mark Kupiak to take over. Mark, do you want to do a quick overview of the requested change here?
Oh, I sure do. Alderman, thank you very much. Thank you very much for organizing this meeting and giving us the opportunity to speak. Before I begin, just clear up a little bit by way of housekeeping. You introduced my client, Henrika. Henrika, one quick question before I start. Henrika, also true that you do have a co-investor with you on this property?
Yes.
Jorge Prado?
Yes.
And Jorge
He's
also
here.
has an interest in the building, correct?
Yes.
Good. With respect to the building, as Henrika mentioned, and I guess for me personally, I'm Mark Kupiak. I'm an attorney. I do some zoning work. Henrika came to me with this problem and I'm trying to help her out. When she bought the property back in 2015, she, like every other person in Chicago who's buying property, the city code requires that a seller of any property, residential property, even a single family home, prior to closing, to buy a certificate of zoning compliance from the city of Chicago. And depending on the nature of the property, whether single family, 2 flat, 3 flat, you would submit an application, a request for a certificate of zoning. City would research it. You'd pay your fee, because there is a fee for this in every case. And then the city would issue a certificate certifying the number of legal dwelling units. And this was set up years ago. I won't go into the whole history, but it was set up years ago by the city to address this situation of, even more so, attic and basement apartments in many of these buildings, just to make it clear to the buyer how many legal apartments are in a building. Anyway, this particular building we're talking about, those of you from the neighborhood that are familiar with it, very clearly a 2-story building. It's an R3 zoning district, which is a 2-flat zoning district. If you look at the records of the Cook County Assessor, they describe it as a multifamily building with 2 apartments. And actually, there's a city permit record. Back in 2009, the city issued a permit to add a new bank of electric meters for 2 apartments and 1 for public. So actually, many aspects of this building certainly just look like a 2-flat. When Henrika bought the building, her seller, looks like perhaps somebody named Sims or something similar, purchased a certificate of zoning compliance from the city, which clearly stated two dwelling units certified. And of course, looking at the building, if you actually walk through the building, even more clear, and Henrika could explain if we need to, it is set up, built as a 2-flat. The stairway system to the 2nd floor is built specifically for a 2-flat. That 2nd floor is laid out as a separate apartment with the kitchen, the bathrooms, etc., right above the apartment below. So the building was built as a 2-flat. And the city issued the zoning certificate as a 2-flat. And Henrika relied on that certificate when she bought the building, because she had to pay a mortgage and she needed the rent from the 2nd apartment to pay that mortgage. And after she bought it in 2015, used it as a 2-flat. More recently, and I won't go into the history, she decided to not be a landlord at this location. And she put the property up for sale. The realtor found the buyer, signed a contract. She got a real estate attorney preparing for closing, and actually had a closing scheduled. And when her real estate attorney went to the city to buy a certificate of zoning compliance, as they were required to do, the city did their research and only would issue this as a single family. And the explanation has been a little difficult, but their bottom line contention was that the actual permit for the building, despite how it was built, that the actual permit was only for a single family. And I'm guessing, if you want just my guess for my zoning experience, this is, despite the fact that it's R3, which would allow a 2-flat, it is R3 subject to certain minimum lot area requirements, and this is a short lot. So the lot's really too small to support 2 units in the R3 zoning district. So it appears that the original builder pulled a permit for a single family, but then went ahead and built a 2-flat, and it's been used as a 2-flat that we believe, over the last 20 years. So Henrika lost her buyer, of course, because the buyer was not going to buy it if it's not a 2-flat. And she eventually was referred to me, and we did a little bit of research. The response we got from the city, or actually her real estate attorney got a response from the city that yes, she had a zoning certificate, but it was issued by mistake. And at this point in time, since the city's aware of it, they're going to correct the mistake. And our recourse at this point would be to rezone the property to a different zoning district that would support a two-flat on a lot this size. And then she'd have to follow up with a architect to pull a new permit for a two-flat, so she could then get a zoning certification and sell it as a two-flat. So that's how we come here today. Not that she ever had an idea she wanted to rezone this property, but it's our only recourse. And the situation would be much more difficult to try to deconvert to a single family at this point, just because of the configuration of the building, the stairway system, et cetera, and not to mention the value of the building. Really too big a building for a single family. Only makes sense to legalize this and allow it to continue as a two-flat. So that's kind of my overview, if that's clear enough. Alderman, I don't know if you had any particular questions at this point?
No, we just had a couple more people join the call. I'm sorry if you were waiting in the waiting room. It didn't give me an indication that there were other people waiting until just now.
That's fine.
So you probably just missed the bulk of what Mr. Kupiak is, the attorney representing the property owner. And the long and the short of what he just shared with us is that the zoning change is being requested to bring the property into compliance so that it can be into zoning compliance so that it can be sold properly. The long and the short of it is that the person that the current owners of the building were given a zoning certificate that was issued in error by the city, probably should have never been issued to begin with. And the owner, when she went to go sell the property, wasn't able to do so because the permit that was originally pulled to build the property was a single family. And at some point, the person that she bought the property from had converted that on their own into a two-flat without proper permitting from the city. Unfortunately, that's not an uncommon practice in the city of Chicago, I don't think, because I've seen that a couple times already during my time here. So the zoning change is not to make any additions to the building. It really is to enable her to bring the zoning into compliance with what the property reflects today. Mark, are there any building code sort of inspections that need to be done on the building to make sure that it's certified for the appropriate zoning?
Absolutely. A matter of fact, unfortunately, as I advised Henrika, our zoning change is really just half the process. She has already consulted an architect who advised her that looks like the building is built to conform with the requirements of the two-flat. However, the architect does have to draw plans, submit plans, and those plans do have to be reviewed by both zoning and the Department of Buildings to make sure it complies with the fire code. And they especially look at the exiting to make sure that it does comply with the two-flat requirements.
And I've recently learned this new term, a type 1 zoning change. Is this a type 1 zoning change where the plans that are being submitted for the zoning change, you can't make any changes? Any variation from the site plan submitted would require an additional zoning review?
Well, Alderman, with respect to the zoning change, you had mentioned the R4. We had mentioned the R4 to begin with, but because of some concern about what are you going to rezone it to, what could you do? Actually, after consulting with the architect, our actual proposal would be to rezone it from R3 to an R3.5, which would be actually a lesser zoning district, but give us enough minimum lot area to do the two-flat. So our actual zoning change, we were going to propose a 3.5. Now, ordinarily, that would not require a type 1 zoning change because it's so small. We're not doubling the FAR, which triggers a type 1. But you tell us, if that were your preference, we'd be happy to follow your lead on that with the type 1.
I think it might be. So just for everybody that's on the call, so you're following along, what they originally requested was a bigger zoning change to allow them to do more. And actually right now they've revised that down to 3.5. I'd like to hear questions from the community to hear their concerns about it. Before my preference probably would be to be a type 1 so that there's assurances that there's not, if there's any concern that the new owners are going to try to expand or build a bigger footprint for the current property. If it's a type 1, they would be required to come back and ask for, or to go through a review if they want to do anything but what was submitted for the plans for this zoning change. So at this point, if you wouldn't mind, if you have a question, just use the raise your hand function on the Zoom, and then I'll call your name, and then we can go one by one. Mr. Clemens, how are you? Go ahead.
I'm doing great. Sorry, I got on here late.
No worries.
What does, I'm usually well versed on this thing, but I actually did forget out this meeting, so I'm not prepared, so excuse me, but what does 3.5 entail? What, would it be allowed to be a 3 flat?
No, it would not be allowed to be a 3 flat. And just to put it in perspective, even an R4 would not allow a 3 flat. Part of the unique circumstance in this one is that this lot, similar to other lots in the block, is only 112 feet deep. A
Short lot.
standard lot in the city is 125 feet deep. So because this one's only 112 feet deep, we only have 2,825 square feet of lot area. So the way the numbers work, even in an R4, you need 1,000 square feet of lot area for each apartment. So even in an R4, you could only build 2 units. But the alderman expressed some concern about, how many units could you build? So we checked with the architect, who suggested to us that the RT 3.5 only requires 1,250 square feet per apartment. So if we get the RT 3.5, it requires 1,250 square feet of lot area for each apartment, which is 2,500, which we would have enough for the 2 flat, but only enough for a 2 flat.
So what happens to the existing apartment that was built?
What do you mean, what happens?
Right now, wasn't one, aren't there 3 flats there currently?
No, absolutely not. This was never, never over a 3rd apartment. This was only as a 2 flat, and it was built, to me, to Henrika walking through the building, it was built as a 2 flat, but only a 2 flat. And the
A
only
high
thing-
basement. If you look at the pictures, I think that's what's a little deceiving. Mark, how's the basement being used?
All right, Henrika, did you hear that? How's that basement being used now?
You're
Henrika,
on
he's
mute.
asking, is there an apartment in the basement?
Henrika, you need to unmute your line if you're going to answer.
Okay, it's connected to the basement, it's connected to the 4th floor.
Oh, it's connected to the 1st floor, so that whoever
Correct,
rents the
correct.
1st floor has the basement.
Correct.
Okay, so legally speaking then, Mark, it's a 2 flat. It looks deceiving. I'm looking at the picture of the building.
Sure.
And you have to take stairs up to the sort of 1st floor unit. So the basement, it looks raised somewhat. John, was that what you were thinking? That it looks like a 3 flat?
Yeah, and also in communications with others that live in the area, they were saying that it was a 3 flat, that somebody lived in the basement. I couldn't verify that. So.
Okay, Henrika, so at this point, I just want to be clear. Right now, are there 2 occupants of the building? So there are 2 renters, one on the 1st floor, one with the basement, and then one on the 2nd floor, not 3 different parties?
Yes, this is correct. The 4th floor is connected with the basement, and 2nd floor it's separate. So it's 2 apartments.
Okay. So there's not going to be any expansion of the property, just to be clear. They're not building anything more. It really is just to.
No.
Right.
No,
It's just
this
to
is
get
correct. No.
get the zoning into compliance so that it can be sold properly as a two flat. Is that right?
Correct.
That
Correct.
is correct.
This is correct.
Okay,
And very clearly, with if we're allowed to rezone to a 3.5, you need 1,250 square feet of lot area for each apartment. So the most anybody could do, Henrika, the subsequent buyer or the next buyer, the most anyone could do would be 2 legal apartments on the site.
And just to clarify too, the main reason for going to, so RS3, you're not in compliance?
Well, the technical explanation, John, is the RS3, which is a 2-flat district, requires 2,500 square feet of lot area for each apartment. So traditionally, actually, if you had a standard lot, you'd need a 40-foot lot to be big enough for a 2-flat in the R3, unless, and again, a little technical, unless you had 60% of the buildings on the block as multifamily. Okay, so sometimes that's an exception where on a standard lot, you might be able to bring it down to 1,500 square feet per apartment. But in our situation, because this lot is only 112 feet deep, we don't even have 3,000 square feet. So that exception would not even help us or apply to us because the lot is still too small for 2 units in the R3.
does that
There's
answer
al-
all your questions, John? Sorry, go
Yeah,
ahead.
there's also some word from people, and again, I apologize because I'm usually a little bit well-versed for these meetings. At least previously, it was a problem building with tenants, and as we know, up in 47th area, there is a bit of a problem with gangs and with tenants up there, that are problem, and problem landlords. I'm not saying in this building there necessarily is, but I didn't know if anyone had any, again, through word of mouth, people that said it was a problem building previously. I'm not sure currently if it is, but that's where the concern comes from.
Got it. Got it. All right. Thanks, John. Was that it for you?
Yeah, that was it.
All right, thanks. And then, Ebis, you have your hand up next. Please go ahead.
Thank you for meeting with us, and thank you for explaining some of the confusion here with this particular building. But just to give you a little bit of background and historical context, that building has been a huge problem building for us, and we all live in the community. A lot of trouble tenants lived in that building as well. Right across from 47, 46, there are 2 other buildings that are currently problem buildings. And so we are dealing with that, a lot of gang-related issues, a lot of safety issues that we're all dealing with here. And so we really are at a point where we are tired of rentals. And a lot of the folks who rent, not everybody, but the owners, they don't live in the community. They don't understand what we go through every single day with these gang members. We are working with the alderman's office right now. We're thankful that they are cooperating and they're helping us deal with all these other problem tenants. But so obviously it is not Henrika's fault that she bought a building and there was some confusion with the way it was zoned. That's fine. And so she bought it the way it is. However, I am still opposed to making it a 2-flat just because that would increase the number of people that are renting. That are going to rent to people that continue to cause problems in our neighborhood. And so we're very concerned about this. So what I want to understand right now is you're going from an R3 to an R4. So is R3, does that mean that it's a 2-flat, or is that a single family, or is R4 then zoning for a 3-flat? So I'm confused on the zoning.
Yeah, so I'll let Mark take that, but this is, so to be clear, like they've revised their request instead of an R4 to change to an R4, they've requested something smaller. to a 3.5. So Mark, I'll let you take a shot at explaining it.
Sure, no, I'm happy to. And thank you, Alderman, because you're exactly right. Because this issue was raised and we went back and took a more careful look at it. And we can fit within the RT 3.5. So the request is to go from an R3 to an R 3.5, which is the smallest zoning district, smallest zoning change that we're able to do. And the technical quirk is the R3 actually is a 2-flat district, but it's a 2-flat district with a minimum lot area requirement. And that minimum lot area requirement is either 2,500 square feet per apartment, or there is an exception if 60% of the buildings on the block are multifamily, then that would be reduced to 1,500 square feet per apartment for the 2-flat. But in either case, we don't qualify. Our particular lot, only 112 feet deep, we've only got 2,800 square feet of lot area. So even that exception to the rule in the R3 does not help us. So we can't continue in the R3. And I'm guessing that's why the original builder didn't pull a permit for a 2-flat, because of the short lot and small lot. But I would like to emphasize, I believe from the permit records that this was built in 1998. So this has been used as a 2-flat for more than 20 years. If you look at the building, as John mentioned, with the height of the building, the basement, the length of the building, this building would just be much too big for use as a single family. The floor plans would not lend itself to a single family because the stairway system is put in front and back for a 2-flat. So I don't even know how she would convert it to a single family for a subsequent buyer to use it as a single family. And I would like to emphasize, we're not changing the building. We're not asking to change the building. And it was never the idea to come change the zoning. Henrika had a buyer and had a real estate closing all scheduled and would have sold it just as is until her attorney found out he could not get the proper zoning certificate. So that's why we're here really as a last resort. So in this case, what we're really trying to do is correct the mistake that the city made when they issued the certificate to her and she bought the building in reliance. And all she's trying to do is just sell it as a 2-flat, just like it was when she bought it.
I got a question. So it's a single family, you're trying to make it a multi-unit, correct?
No, well,
No.
from a zoning perspective, that is correct.
So it's a single family house, basically, is what you're saying, and they're trying to make it multi-unit, correct?
No,
So-
no, I would take issue with that.
You're having you're throwing this jargon out here, and you're 3.5. In layman's terms, it's a single family house, and that's the way it's supposed to be, correct? Because they used it as a 2-flat for like the last 10 years or 20 years. That makes no difference. What it's zoned as is a single family house where they're housing gangbangers. And I don't know if this landlord actually knows what happened in front of her house, but a gangbanger was shot in the head, right in the cheek. Is she aware of that? Does she know about that?
Henrika, are you aware of the,
Are you aware that you had a gangbanger shot in front of your house in 2020, right in the cheek? Because you house gangbangers in that house because you don't live in a neighborhood. You don't care who you rent to. You just rent it out to anyone.
I mean,
Are you aware of that?
that house is empty. Nobody live over there.
No,
I think that already 2 years.
It's empty now,
2020.
but it wasn't empty before. And we've
Excuse
lived
me, excuse
on
I lived
time.
there 15 years, and
So-
I've seen people on and out of that house you rent to. And I got another question.
Yeah,
You
we
said
had the problem. That's why we keep it empty, the house, and we don't need nobody because we don't want to bring a problem over there for neighborhood. It's
you
true.
kept it empty
We
because
had
they
the problem before.
you
It's
kept the
true.
house empty because they made you evict the people. The city came after you with a lawyer and made you evict the people. You wouldn't have done that. And my other question is, I'm looking at your record. You bought house in 2015 for $40,000 and you're trying to sell it for 335. You didn't do one thing to this house. You didn't do any construction or anything to this house. Not one thing.
When we buy that house, we replaced the furniture, AC was not there, or electrical pipe, water pipe, electrical, everything we replaced. You know, it was not there. It's not even door okay over there. Everything was stealing, you know that. Nothing was inside, everything was destroyed when we
We
bought the
don't know
house.
that, ma'am. What we do know is that almost every weekend, we have gangbangers standing in front of your vacant house now that it's vacant.
You can go there right now.
And we report the police.
Yeah, we report, I know, like 2 weeks
We
ago,
do
I was
not- we
over
do
there
not
and
want-
neighbor.
Any more rentals in our neighborhood within a block from us, that is enough.
We have enough.
We're having enough problems, and I understand that you didn't.
I
hear
understand
this or
that,
whatever,
but
but
it's not
too
my
much for
fault
us.
what I can do with that. That's why I want to solve it the way
That doesn't make
it's taken to get that house.
You don't live
So please
here.
help me.
You don't know what we go through every single day.
So it doesn't make a difference to us what you can and can't do with it. We don't
I
want
mean,
another
I
multi-unit family.
Can I-
Absolutely
I
fine.
understand it's better if the owner is live over there, but I don't have that choice. That's why we want to solve that.
Can I ask a question? Sorry to interrupt on this, but just one thing you mentioned about all the work you did. If you did all this work since 2015 and you pulled permits, wouldn't have this issue have come up back then? Because it seems, did you pull permits for that? And if not, why, how come it wasn't flagged for all the work that you saying you did?
Exactly.
For the work we do is not because we don't build in nothing. We just replacing the existing furnace or air condition. We don't do any duct work, and this is why you don't need permits for that. We just replace whatever was there. And the electrical, we just pull the wires and rewiring the house. And the conducts was there. We don't even remove a wall from that house. We just replacing the electrical, whatever.
That requires a permit.
Yes, you need a permit.
Yeah.
I have a permit.
And then we don't have any problem with a permit.
Because you didn't pull one. And that's
No.
why this never came
No,
up.
we haven't.
You don't have problems with a permit if you pull it. Of course you don't.
So if
I
we,
know
if we
that
look-
there's, folks, I'm so sorry to do this, is we have another meeting scheduled that we're already 6 minutes behind on. So let me just assure everybody right now, no decision's gonna be made about the zoning change at all. I feel like there's more questions that need to be answered. We'll set a second meeting for this, so this is not some sort of like done deal, no decision's been made. I'll be very clear about that right now. We'll set up enough time, we'll block an hour for the next conversation. If you have specific questions ahead of time that you can send through to Kathy in my office, then we can pass those along to Mr. Kupiak so that they can come prepared with some of the more specific questions that you have. And we'll get that rescheduled within the next, we'll try to get this rescheduled for next Monday if we have room on the docket for it, okay?
Alderman, if I could, just to answer just quickly that one question that the gentleman raised, as far as what this building is. As a zoning attorney, the city has a system with the zoning certifications where the city certifies what a building is. So me as a zoning attorney, I rely on the city's certification process. When she bought it, they certified it as a 2-flat. It was used as a 2-flat both before and after. So my opinion is this building is a 2-flat, and we're merely asking to continue that. Our position.
So on that, I can't take any more questions because we're already late starting the other one. We will put out another notice and we'll send it out to all the same people who are on this call. Ebis, if I can rely on you with your neighbors and everything to get that word out, Robert, we'll make sure you have the information as well. So thank you everybody for joining us. It'll be posted on Facebook as well. So we'll pick this up again. If you've got specific questions about the property that you'd like answered, send those through to Kathy or to ward11@cityofchicago.org. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.